In the year 1980, Stanley Kubrick dipped his toes in the world of horror with The Shining, bringing together an extremely talented cast and crew to execute what would go on to be one of the most celebrated horror films of all time. In this scene, something very interesting happens. When Danny rounds the corner and comes face to face with the ghostly twins, the typical and expected horror sound cue happens before we, the audience, can see any threat. This scene always stops me in my tracks, as the off timing of the cue always elevates the fear I feel, not only for what I am seeing, but my fear for the young Danny Torrance. This scene occurs somewhat early in the film at only around the 50-minute mark, and sets the tone for the remainder of the experience. The atmosphere of the Overlook Hotel compounds from scene to scene, creating an uncanny nightmare that keeps us on the edge of our seats. The hallways of the Overlook sit eerily silent, footsteps echo through barren ballrooms and lounges, and the sense of isolation is palpable. In Catching the Big Fish, an autobiography by David Lynch, the following anecdote is provided.
I was working on The Elephant Man and was at Lee International Studios in England, standing in a hallway. One of the producers of The Elephant Man, Jonathan Sanger, brought over some guys who were working with George Lucas and said, "They've got a story for you." And I said, "Okay." They said, "Yesterday, David, we were out at Elstree Studios and we met Kubrick. And as we were talking to him, he said to us, 'How would you fellas like to come up to my house tonight and see my favorite film?' They said that would be fantastic. They went up and Stanley Kubrick showed them Eraserhead. So right then, I could have passed away peaceful and happy."
David Lynch was an American filmmaker, actor, painter, and musician, who was widely regarded as one of the most influential filmmakers in the history of cinema. Known primarily for his cinematic work, Lynch colored his career with modern classics such as Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and the Mark Frost collaboration Twin Peaks. Before achieving worldwide recognition as a filmmaker, he created the now iconic film Eraserhead. Released in 1977, Eraserhead was Lynch's first feature film project. He made the film while attending the Advanced Film Institute, and the film took 5 years to shoot, as the production would frequently run out of budget. The film follows a young man struggling to find bliss in an oppressive industrial hellscape, all while he confronts the horrors of parenthood. The most impressive aspect of the film to me is the use of sound. Due to the limited budget, Eraserhead builds the world around the characters with limited visuals. The bulk of the world is created through a harrowing soundscape, which combines windy room tone, the echoes of heavy industrial machinery, and unpleasant Foley to accompany the film's bizarre set pieces and moments. The attention to sound is an undeniable achievement and is what led to the film being as influential as it is today. In his book, Audiovisual, film theorist Michel Chion describes sound as something that has the ability to broaden the cinematic space beyond what is shown on screen. The most apparent aspect of this idea is acousmatic condition, which is any sound within a film that is heard without a clear source. Chion makes the observation that when an audience encounters an unseen sound, instinctively, they begin to search for the origin. Our perception has to find a way to connect our hearing and our sight. The absence of any visible cause behind a sound gives the sound authority over our psychology, forcing us to shape an imagined world beyond the boundaries of the frame. This concept is undeniable when approaching the soundscape and sonic world of Eraserhead. The industrial tones, electrical hums, and echoed emptiness overtakes the soundtrack and looms over every scene. The sources of these sounds are largely impossible to see, but they suggest a massive mechanical hellscape that exists only beyond the frame. The oppressive, thick atmosphere of Eraserhead does not emerge solely from the action on screen, but from the implied, unseen forces portrayed solely by sound that control and shape the reality of our characters. Chion's concept is further explored, as he describes sound as the expressive and informative value with which a sound enriches a given image, creating the impression that this meaning naturally comes from what is seen. Lynch uses sound in Eraserhead to transform ordinary spaces into psychologically oppressive landscapes. Sound does not accompany the world of the film, it creates it. If you are given the opportunity to watch Eraserhead, do so, But whatever you do, don't watch it on your phone.
Now, if you're playing the movie on a telephone, you will never in a trillion years experience the film. It's such a sadness that you think you've seen a film on your fucking telephone. Get real.
Following the theatrical release of Eraserhead, David Lynch would go on to create more spectacular and singular theatrical films, moving through his filmography with The Elephant Man, Dune, Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks, and the subsequent Fire Walk with Me. We finally arrive at... The film follows Fred, who receives unmarked VHS tapes showing footage of his home before he is abruptly arrested for his wife's murder, at which point he mysteriously disappears and is replaced by a younger man leading a different life. In my opinion, it is one of Lynch's darkest films, as it came directly from the inspiration Lynch found in the murder trial of the late O.J. Simpson. The soundscape of this film is a clear evolution of the seeds planted in Eraserhead, as Lynch utilizes and manipulates the presence of sound to evoke an emotion, and takes the use of sound beyond world building. While I found Eraserhead to be an expressionist use of sound, Lost Highway leans more towards impressionism and the internal thoughts and psychology of our fractured protagonist. The first portion of the film especially features some incredibly off-putting sound design, as the home of our main characters is transformed into a dark, oppressive void of distrust and paranoia. The paranoia comes to a head when our main character is approached by a stranger at a house party he attends with his wife.
We've met before, haven't we? I don't think so.
What Lynch does here is so simple. When this off-putting and uncanny interaction begins, Lynch entirely removes the music, chatter of partygoers, and the entire soundscape of the space we inhabit. A heavy, thick droning slowly builds, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere as the tension of the scene compounds.
Are you sure? Of course. As a matter of fact, I'm there right now. What do you mean you're where right now? At your house.
Once their interaction ends and the mystery man leaves, the music comes right back, just as if nothing had ever happened. Returning to Audiovision, Chion introduces us to the 3 listening modes. Conventional cinema ultimately provides a stable structure for these modes, stabilizing the meaning of sounds by directly helping viewers understand and verify the source of any given sound, and understand the important dialogue. Casual listening refers to listening to a sound in order to gather information about its cause or source. Semantic listening is a code or language that interprets a message, spoken language, as well as things like Morse code. Reduced listening is the act of listening to a sound and taking it as it is. The sound itself is the object, and is meant to be observed on its own instead of acting as a vehicle for something else. Lost Highway is a fascinating film for its disruptions of these widely understood expectations. Sounds will often lack clear origin, weakening our ability to listen casually, while the often emotionless deliveries from characters greatly harms our semantic interpretation. Viewers are most often pushed towards reduced listening. Sounds are meant to be observed and heard as they are, and sometimes will not represent a source or other variable. Droning, distorted room tone, or ambience become sensory experiences before they deliver any narrative information. This forces audiences to experience sound as a texture of the scene rather than an explanation of it. Sound is used to transform the listening experience into a source of deep psychological uncertainty. This practice does a fantastic job mirroring the film's fractured identities and unstable, dreamlike reality. Speaking of dreams, in 2001, David Lynch released what is widely considered to be his masterpiece, though I would argue that title belongs to Twin Peaks' Fire Walk with Me. The film was originally shot as a television pilot, following the success of Twin Peaks, but once the pilot didn't sell, Lynch used the footage to create a feature film. Mulholland Drive follows Betty, a young and aspiring actress arriving in Los Angeles to pursue her dreams. She then befriends a car accident victim who is suffering from amnesia. Meanwhile, a Hollywood director must confront interference from underworld figures while casting his latest film.
Beat it, pal.
Mulholland Drive adopts a distinct dreamlike quality, as not a scene goes by without an odd tangent, odd character, or detail found within the visuals, and especially in the sound. Later in the film, Betty and Diane spontaneously attend a performance in a historic theater. Their performance notably consists of a master of ceremonies, as he repeatedly insists that there is no band.
No hay banda. There is no band.
He insists that everything the audience hears is only a recording, demonstrating this by producing sounds of a clarinet, trombone, trumpet, and even thunderous booms accompanied by flashing light. Each sound continues to exist despite their source disappearing, which exposes the artificiality of the audiovisual experience. In Audiovision, Chion forges the term synkresis, which combines synthesis and synchronism. He defines it as the spontaneous and irresistible weld produced between a particular auditory phenomena and a visual phenomena when they occur at the same time. Through this process, audiences are able to accept emotional meaning as something natural even when it is fully constructed and artificial. He further insists that cinema is dependent on this audiovisual agreement, a kind of symbolic contract that the audio viewer enters into, agreeing to think of sound and image as forming a single entity. In Mulholland Drive, ominous droning tones and music cues connect emotion and images, likely before any narrative meaning has become clear. We as the audience feel dread, sorrow, or longing because sound has already shaped our perception. David Lynch uses synkresis to blur reality and illusion, which directly reveals to us the ways that cinema manipulates us emotionally through the fusion of sound and image. These senses emerge so thoroughly that the film's emotional truth emerges before our eyes, long before we ever find any narrative certainty. Throughout his filmography, David Lynch is the ultimate example of what Michel Chion ultimately believes about the art of cinema. Film is not simply communicating meaning through what we see, but through what we hear. From the industrial hellscape that is auditorily constructed in Eraserhead, to the destabilizing and off-putting listening experience of Lost Highway, and finally, to the exposing of the audiovisual illusion in Mulholland Drive, David Lynch constantly reminds us that sound shapes our perception sometimes before visual narrative ever can. Perhaps that is where we find the true power of film. Long after the credits roll and the image fades to black, it is the sound that echoes continuously inside our minds.
Cut it. Thank you very much, Carol. I'm coming back.
Checking the gate? Checking the gate! Thank you, we'll tell you what happens next!
Thank you very much for coming in. I know how busy you are.
Are you kidding me? I love this.